I'm delighted to have an opportunity to warmly welcome the bill before us today on genuine progress indicators. I think those indicators, they're the only way really to try and measure the well-being of a whole nation, of a whole people, and the well-being indeed of every individual, of all our citizens. And up to now, I suppose, we've generally had sort of ad hoc and partial responses to looking at the impacts of national economic policy and budgetary policy, and at budget time, those have been some of the very brief impacts that we've looked at, but not in the profound way that I think this bill would seek to pursue. The Budgetary Oversight Committee, of course, of which I'm a member, we've commenced a study of gender equality budgeting and the basic programme of action in that area, which is being pursued now by DEPR, by the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform. And that programme does offer an opportunity to finally have a serious gender equality impact analysis of each budget from budget 2018. Obviously, we're targeting towards, in particular, budget 2019 in areas like childcare and encouraging, obviously, more young women to take up apprenticeships and so on. I've also, of course, requested the Budgetary Oversight Committee, and they've agreed that a disability impact analysis will also be promoted and monitored for budget 2019. And the Budgetary Oversight Committee, of course, will be meeting Senator John Dolan, who chairs the Oireachtas Disability Group, of which I'm also a member, and other leading advocates of the disability sector in coming weeks. Of course, as I've said, we've had very cursory and essentially PR exercises to poverty-proof budgets in the past. Generally, the budget expenditure book had 2 or 3 pages of poorly researched data to try to put forward the idea, of course, that even draconian austerity budgets were somehow fair. Indeed, Deputy Howlin, as former Minister for Public Expenditure and Reform, will be familiar with some of those in the past. But there was never a serious effort to estimate the often vicious impacts of budgetary decreases on the most vulnerable citizens' sectors of our community, and the kind of real suffering that households and individuals went through. I recall, for example, as an energy spokesperson in the past for the Labour Party, developing policies to address energy poverty. But there was very poor statistical and research data on that crucial aspect of poverty, although every year we knew from the basic data we had, Cathaoirleach, that people's lives were actually shortened by energy poverty, and people died because of it, and because there was no proper appreciation in government on this huge area of poverty, particularly for senior citizens. Of course, we also had the phenomenon of the green impact analysis of budgets when the Green Party was in power with Fianna Fáil, and some of those headings are echoed in Section 3 and Section 2 here in the environmental accounts. But Minister Gormley, of course, used to come in here every year, and what I used to feel gave a totally pointless review of mostly green aspirations, and unfortunately to which the Fianna Fáil party had no intention of following up or fulfilling. And of course, that Green government led the country into a terrible crash. Cathaoirleach, during the 2011-2016 austerity government, led by Fine Gael, I introduced a High Pay and Wealth Commission bill. That was in 2014, and the bill sought to establish a 9-person commission within the CSO, whose task would be to regularly inform the public about levels of wealth and income across Irish society. Data collection and compilation on income and wealth was the starting point, and the bill, of course, was inspired by states such as Norway, where everybody's income and level of taxable wealth is freely available to all citizens, and where any citizen can go in and find out what the wealth and income is of any other citizen. And of course, Minister Noonan at the time thought this proposal was astonishing and hilarious. The Commission, of course, that I proposed was to engage in research on best practice models of income distribution, and again I see this echoed to some extent in the first table that Deputy Howlin has set out under economic accounts. And that commission, as I said, was to engage in research on best practice models of income distribution and seek to determine an appropriate structure in which the awarding of executive high pay and other remuneration may be reformed. And in fact, it was outrageous executive high pay bankers and people in the financial sector in particular, and in the construction sector, paying themselves millions per annum. It was at them, I think, that bill was mostly aimed. But clearly, that bill went much further, I believe, to establishing a fairer fairer and more equal society than Deputy Howland's bill before us today. Nevertheless, the general approach in Deputy Howland's legislation is broadly, it's a useful starting point, I believe, with what I was trying to achieve in 2014. Sadly, of course, the 2014 High Pay and Wealth Commission bill, it was strongly rejected, as I said, by Minister Michael Noonan, Deputy Howland's former colleague in government, and the bill was voted down by the Fine Gael-led austerity government. Legislation, though, for the concept of genuine progress indicators in Section 2 of the bill, or socio-economic indicators, I think would indeed be a valuable step forward to move towards that more egalitarian society. And as I said, Deputy Howland has given useful examples in Section 2.2 of the areas which will be key genuine progress indicators for national distribution accounts if we would have them in forthcoming years. At the Budgetary Oversight Committee, of course, we've grappled, as Deputy Burton would know, with the problems of measuring GNP and GDP, especially after the incredible statistic aberration and jump in 2015. The new GNI Star Index, Cathaoirleach, seeks to address some of the volatility caused by multinational capital and knowledge movements. But even GNI Star, it's only a very broad and tentative measure of Ireland's economic performance. Indeed, it was interesting today to read Kieran McQuinn of ESRI saying that a totally new index was necessary to measure underlying growth in the Irish economy. Don't mind to be able to move to the kind of analysis, I think, which this bill rightly asks us to engage in. And because of the distortions of the past caused by our large multinational sector. So the collection of much better data on citizens' livelihoods, including household savings and expenditure, would be a really important step forward. The inclusion of transport infrastructure is also useful, and I was interested to hear my Fianna Fáil colleague here speaking about transport links to County Meath and to the development of a huge population in that county, and I think that's something that should indeed be a priority. But the big lacuna in the suggested list for economic accounts, I believe, Deputy Howland, however, is the housing area, which I think should also be included. For example, did the last two austerity governments carry out any cost-effectiveness analysis of the total shutting down of social and public housing and the kind of problems we've had practically every single day we've discussed in this Dáil, including this morning, in relation to the huge backlog in social housing? I believe any such cost-effective analysis would have shown that future personal and social costs of closing down the social and public housing, they have been staggering for individuals and far overshadowed, I believe, arrangements to finance the outrageous blanket bank guarantee. The suggested social and human health accounts would also, I believe, be very helpful. Father Sean Healy and Social Justice Ireland have drawn our attention many times to how badly Ireland is performing on a range of UN-backed indicators covering the economy, environment and society. Social Justice Ireland's Sustainable Progress Index 2018, of course, highlights how poorly we've done. We've performed, for example, on low pay, on long-term unemployment, on household debt, on greenhouse gas emissions. So it's good to see that those areas are areas that Deputy Howland has pursued. On his second list of useful indicators, the social and human wealth accounts, I suppose that again very valuable in relation in particular to unpaid work and to the work of carers. This huge area of work that goes on in our society, on which the society, in terms of GDP and GNI, even hardly recognises. I also notice an interesting inclusion in the human capital, health and wellness heading, which is, for example, road traffic accidents, an area which I obviously have a particular interest in trying to pursue, reforming legislation to, bring about a Vision Zero situation in relation to road transport in this country. But the huge impact on people's lives from the maladministration of traffic law undoubtedly has a very negative impact on a society. And lastly, of course, the environmental accounts, environmental footprint analysis, the natural capital accounts and the ecosystem services that Deputy Howland refers to are also very valuable. So in conclusion, Cathaoirleach, as I said, I believe that the bill before us, the genuine progress indicator Indicators and National Distribution Accounts Bill 2017 is an important bill. It would be a useful remit to give to our statisticians and our national organisations to pursue the kind of indicators that Deputy Howland has outlined. I think we've had experience indeed in other countries, especially Scandinavia, as I mentioned in relation to, for example, Norway, of monitoring all these areas which impact on citizens' lives, and it would be quite right that we would do the same in this country, and that then we'd be able to frame economic policy, national economic and budgetary policy, from a standpoint of real knowledge of how our people are living. Thanks, Cathaoirleach.